The moment my husband reached for the pen to sign our son's birth certificate, I said one word: no. 6 months earlier, he called me a vessel. That day, he learned I was a vault. I remember the day we bought the house. It was a classic 2-story colonial in a quiet North Carolina cul-de-sac, complete with a wraparound porch and a literal white picket fence. Greg had swept me off my feet, carrying me over the threshold while shouting to the empty rooms that this was the start of our family, our very own empire. Greg was every woman's dream: charismatic, handsome, tall, and possessed a smile that could sell ice to an Alaskan. He was also a powerhouse salesman in the medical service sector. For 6 years, that house was filled with the scent of my cinnamon candles and his expensive cedarwood cologne. We were the couple everyone envied: happy, successful, middle class, and deeply, visibly in love. But the foundation of our sanctuary started to crumble the day the test turned blue. It wasn't that we didn't want a baby, we did. It was all we had wanted for over 6 years, and when it finally came to pass, Greg and I were over the moon. But we started to descend back to earth when, at 12 weeks, I was hit with a high-risk diagnosis. Strict pelvic rest, the doctor had said, her face grave. No stress, no lifting, and absolutely no intimacy, May. Lots of bed rest. If you want to carry this boy to term, you have to follow these rules. For the first few weeks, Greg played the part. He was my rock, my support, and I fell in love with him even harder. But as the months dragged on, I could sense it, his patience wearing away little by little. He wasn't so sweet anymore. He just seemed over the whole thing. But I told myself he was tired. It's normal. He'll come back to me. One Tuesday night, I was propped up on pillows trying to find a comfortable position where my back didn't ache or cry out. I was trying to focus on a book to distract myself when Greg came in. He didn't ask how the baby was kicking or if I needed anything. He didn't go to his side of the bed. He sat right next to me, his hand sliding over my thigh, his eyes searching mine with a desperation that made my heart race for all the wrong reasons. Greg? My voice was low. It sounded almost like a plea. That only seemed to set him off. May, enough is enough, he said, his voice dropping into a low, dangerous register. It's been months. I've been a good sport about this doctor's note, but I'm getting tired. I have needs. I'm a man, and I'm tired of hearing no every single time I touch my own wife. Greg, please, I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. You heard the specialist. It isn't a note, it's a warning. If we don't follow the rules, I could lose the baby. I could hemorrhage. You're asking me to risk our son's life, and my life, for one night. He let go of my hand and stood up, his face contorting with a sneer. I'm asking you to remember that you have a husband. I work 60 hours a week to provide this lifestyle, and I come home to a woman who treats me like a stranger. I'm not some boy you beckon to serve your every need. What about my fucking needs? I'm tired of the excuses, May. I'm tired of being told I can't touch what belongs to me. What belongs to you? I gasped, the words stinging like lie. I am a human being carrying your child, not a piece of property. Then start acting like a wife, Greg yelled, his voice echoing through the house, reaching walls it had never reached before. Because right now, you're just a bill I'm paying. If you aren't going to meet my needs, don't be surprised when I find someone who will. I'm a man, May. I'm not built to wait around like a statue. His words stunned me, but I tried to stay calm. We're both under a lot of stress. He's just lashing out, I told myself. Where are you going? I called out as he turned toward the door. He paused, his silhouette dark against the hallway light, framed by the nursery we decorated with such hope. Out. Somewhere I don't feel like an intruder in my own home. Somewhere someone actually cares that I'm tired of waiting. The front door slammed so hard the windows rattled, and the framed ultrasound on the nightstand fell face down. I sat there in the dark, my hands shaking over my bump, feeling the first real crack in the life I thought was perfect. I told myself again he just needed to blow off steam. I told myself he'd come back and apologize once he calmed down. I didn't know that Greg wasn't just blowing off steam. He was already looking for my replacement. The shift was immediate after that night. Greg stopped pretending to care about my recovery. We became strangers in the same house. For the first few days, I was certain he would walk in with flowers and an apology note. But as days turned into a week, I knew that apology wasn't coming. Greg started coming home at all hours, the cedarwood scent I loved replaced by a cloying floral perfume, something that smelled like cheap clover and expensive desperation. I deluded myself, of course. I told myself he was just out with his sales team, trying to escape the tension of a house that felt like a hospital ward. I chose to be a fool, because the truth was too heavy to carry while I was already high risk. I thought if I just stayed quiet, if I just made it to the delivery, the man who carried me over the threshold would come back. Then Hannah happened. I was lying in the guest room at midnight. The stairs to our primary suite had become a mountain I couldn't climb when I heard the front door click. Then came a giggle, a woman's giggle, in my foyer. I dragged myself to the door, clutching the frame for support. I watched as Greg walked in with a woman named Hannah. She was a pharmaceutical rep from his circle, sharp, predatory, and currently wearing a cocktail dress that left nothing to the imagination. "Is the vessel asleep?" Hannah hissed, her voice dripping with sugary, fake concern as she glanced toward the guest room. Is that me? Am I the vessel? A part of me expected Greg to call her off for something so demeaning. Instead, I heard, "Who cares?" Greg muttered, his hands already sliding down her back. "Now, let's go do that thing you promised me." I heard them laugh. I heard the slick sound of their kiss as they moved toward the stairs. It took me a while to register what was happening in my own home, and another moment to understand that my husband was cheating on me in our matrimonial bed while I was just steps away. I could hear them. Hannah didn't keep quiet or moan softly. She was loud. He was louder. They were intentional, as if determined to break every last piece of me. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. I just stood there in the shadows, a ghost in my own home. Eventually, I sank to the hallway floor and stayed there for hours, listening to the sound of my 6-year marriage being dismantled by the man who was supposed to be its foundation. The sun crawled through the blinds of the guest room the next morning, but it brought no warmth. I hadn't slept. I had stayed on that hallway floor until the house went quiet, eventually dragging my aching body back to the guest bed just as the birds began to chirp. I heard the shower upstairs. I heard the muffled conversation. Then the front door clicked. Hannah was gone. I sat at the kitchen table, a glass of water in front of me, waiting. When Greg finally came downstairs, he looked refreshed. He was wearing his best charcoal suit, smelling of that cedarwood cologne again, as if he hadn't spent the night scrubbing my scent off his skin with another woman's perfume. He smelled like my husband, as if what happened last night hadn't happened. He stopped when he saw me. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed that he had to address it. "Greg," I said, my voice brittle, like dead leaves. "You brought her here. You brought that woman into our bed." "I told you I had needs, May," he said, walking to the coffee maker like it was just any other Wednesday. "I was honest with you. I told you I wasn't going to wait around like a statue. You made your choice. You prioritized the kid over the marriage. This is just the fallout." "The kid? You mean our son? You mean my health?" I stood up, gripping the edge of the table to keep my legs from shaking. "The specialist said sex could kill me or him. This isn't a choice, Greg. It's survival." He turned, the coffee pot in his hand, his eyes cold. Absolutely no trace of the man I loved in them. "I'm a high-performance man, May. I'm out there winning for this family every day. I'm not going to be penalized because your body is failing at its one job right now. Look, let's be adults about this. It's just Hannah. It's physical. Once you give birth and things return to normal, I'll stop seeing her. We'll go back to the way we were. It's a temporary fix. You think you can just flip a switch? You think I'll suddenly forget that you're cheating on me? I whispered, tears finally stinging my eyes. I'm supposed to just heal from the birth? And then what? You'll just come back to me? Exactly, he said, taking a sip of his coffee. We'll be a family. Everything will be fine. I shook my head, refusing to believe the stupid words coming out of his mouth. But Greg, I said, my voice trembling, even after the birth, I'll need 6 to 8 weeks of recovery. I won't be ready the second I get home from the hospital. Greg paused, the mug halfway to his lips. His expression shifted from indifference to irritation. Weeks? You're telling me I have to wait another 2 months after the kid is out? I'm telling you, my body will have just been through a major medical event, and sex would be the last thing on my mind. He set the mug down on the granite counter with a sharp clack. Then I guess I'll just have to keep seeing Hannah until you're functional again, won't I? I'm not a monk, May. I'm a man, a provider. If you aren't going to be a wife, I'll find someone who will fill the gap until you can. Just stay focused on the baby. Stay in bed. He grabbed his briefcase and walked out without looking back. I stood there, staring at the white picket fence through the kitchen window, pushing back the urge to grab the mug and hurl it at him. I realized then that Greg didn't want a partner, he wanted a body. And since I was broken, he had simply leased another one to get him through the season. I didn't cry. The tears had dried into something hard and sharp. I went to the nursery, sat in the rocking chair, and pulled out my phone. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call my friends. I called a private investigator. I need eyes on my husband, I said, my voice as cold as Greg's. I want names, dates, and receipts for every penny he spends on his mistress. I want a paper trail so long it'll choke him. He thought I was a vessel waiting to be filled. He didn't realize I was a vault. And I had just changed the combination. At 36 weeks, my body felt like a ticking time bomb. My sister Fiona had spent weeks planning a shower in our backyard. She'd transformed that traditional white picket fence into a sea of blue silk and white hydrangeas. Our closest friends, our neighbors, and even Greg's colleagues were there, filling the air with chatter and the clinking of punch glasses. Greg had been distant for weeks, only coming home to change clothes and sleep in the primary suite, the one that still smelled like Hannah's floral clover perfume. I hadn't stepped foot inside since that night. He'd barely spoken to me, but he'd promised to be there for the shower. For the image, he'd said. Little did he know, I didn't even want him there. I was sitting in a cushioned chair, my swollen feet propped up, trying to force a smile for my mother-in-law, when a black SUV pulled into the driveway. Greg got out, looking every bit the big dog in his charcoal suit. But he didn't walk toward me. He walked to the passenger side. The backyard went deathly quiet as he helped Hannah out of the car. She wasn't wearing a cocktail dress this time. She was wearing a white lacy sundress, the kind a mother-to-be would wear. She had her arm linked through Greg's, her head resting on his shoulder as they walked onto the grass like they were the guests of honor. "Hi, everyone," Hannah chirped, her voice cutting through the silence like a jagged blade. "Greg told me May was feeling a bit overwhelmed today, so I thought I'd come by and help him host. You know how it is when the vessel is full, she just doesn't have the energy for guests." Fiona dropped a tray of lemon tarts, the porcelain shattering against the patio. She looked like she was about to commit murder, her eyes locked on Hannah as if preparing to launch herself across the lawn. I caught her eye and gave the slightest shake of my head. Not yet. Not now. Greg didn't look ashamed. He looked defiant. He led Hannah right up to my chair. May, Hannah brought a gift, he said, his voice flat. Hannah handed me a small, beautifully wrapped box. I opened it to find a bottle of expensive champagne and a set of silk lingerie, size extra small. It's for after, Hannah whispered, leaning down so only I could hear. When you're finally functional again. Though honestly, Greg says he's gotten quite used to the upgraded model. You should really go inside, honey. You're looking a bit gray. I'll handle the opening of the presents for you. She didn't wait for an answer. She turned to my guests, clapped her hands, and began directing people toward the gift table. Come on, everyone. Let's show Greg how much we appreciate all the hard work he's doing for this family. I watched my husband laugh at one of her jokes. I watched him pour her a drink from the pitcher Fiona had made. I watched our neighbors whisper behind their hands, their eyes darting between me and the woman now sitting in the chair beside my husband, the chair that was meant for me. Fiona leaned down beside me, her knuckles white as she gripped the arm of my chair. May, say the word. I will drag her out of here by those blonde extensions. I don't care what happens. No, I said, my voice as cold and still as a frozen lake. It's good he brought her. Let them watch. Let the whole neighborhood see exactly the kind of man he is. Underneath my maternity smock, my hand gripped my phone. I wasn't looking at the gifts. I was looking at the notification that had just popped up from my private investigator. I have footage of them at the jewelry store yesterday, the message read. He bought her a diamond tennis necklace using your joint savings account. $12,000. I have the receipt. I looked at Hannah, who was now holding up a tiny baby onesie Greg had picked out, cooing over it as if she were the one who had spent months on bed rest to keep it safe. You're right, Hannah, I said, standing slowly, my heart hammering in a steady, rhythmic beat of war. I think I've seen enough. I'm going to go inside and rest. I have a feeling the next few days are going to be very busy. I walked away from the music, away from the blue balloons, and away from the man I no longer recognized. I went into our white picket fence house and locked the door. I didn't cry. I didn't break a single plate. I simply sat at my desk and sent one final email to my lawyer. He brought her to the house in front of 50 witnesses. The wasteful dissipation and alienation of affection claims are locked in. I'm ready to deliver.